for dining. In the recommendation section on line 10, staff does recommend approval of the site plan application, noting that as we note in our analysis in the report, staff finds that the application is largely consistent with the code requirements as well as the policy guidance in the comprehensive plan and small area plan. Where there are remaining items to be resolved post-Planning Commission consideration, staff's of the opinion that these are sort of customary in nature as things that would largely get worked out during the building permit process, and so we think those can be resolved administratively. And with that, I'll turn it over to our case planner for our fuller report, Mr. Jeff Hollern.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Jeff Hollern. I'm with the planning staff. The applicant is proposing to partially renovate the former Stratford Motor Lodge site to construct a new two-story restaurant with over 2,000 square feet of indoor seating and over 7,300 square feet of outdoor seating. As Paul had mentioned, the staff finds that the use in the development program are generally consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and relevant small area plan, and staff is supportive of the proposed use and requested waivers. Following a review of their recent December 1st resubmission, staff has issued the applicant minor technical comments with the request that they be addressed in a post-action submission to be reviewed and approved administratively by the planning director and the public works director. On November 1st, 2023, the Planning Commission was introduced to the project and referred the site plan to the AAB and Urban Forestry Commission. Both groups were shown the project in November and forwarded their recommendation and comments to the applicant prior to their recent resubmission on December 1st. Site features such as the Broad Street elevation, site lighting, and landscaping throughout the site have all been adjusted as a response to those comments from staff, Planning Commission, and the two boards. On lines 131 to 204 of the staff report, the comprehensive plan, the West Broad small area plan, the design guidelines, and the streetscape standards all emphasize redevelopment of underutilized properties with a focus on pedestrian accessibility and for better Broad Street activation. The waiver and parking analysis section starting on line 206 outlines the extent of the requested waivers and parking reduction, along with how they may be justified or mitigated through alternatives and post-action submittals. The applicant submitted a TDM plan which focuses on the site's proximity and support for transportation alternatives as well as the nearby public parking within the downtown core. City staff is supportive of the requested landscaping waivers and the parking modification of 65%, given that the project is a partial demolition and renovation of a relatively small lot, and the proposal includes approximately 30% of the total site square footage is surface parking. In addition, a majority of the total restaurant seating is outdoor seating, which is subject to a seasonal use. As of today, I had not received any public comment, even though we advertised for tonight's public hearing. And that is it for the staff report. I do have some members of our applicant team here as well as online, and they do have a presentation for you. So thank you.
Thank you. Please.
I can stand over there. Arash Tafakur, one of the owners of Dominion Wine and Beer. Thank you for attending today and taking away from the holidays. But I want to thank city planning staffs, all the city boards, City Hall to get us to this point. It's been a great civil experience for us and learning experience for our team. Has awarded us some great feedback that you will see adjusted in the plans. Want to especially thank Karen White of Walter Phillips, Matt Lee of Lee Design Studio, and the rest of our team. I will let Matt and Karen take it from here. If you guys have any questions for me, I'll be right over here and be able to answer any operational things you guys, concerns or anything like that you have.
Thank you.
Matt.
Asking for clerk. Okay. Good evening. My name is Matt Lee, Lee Design Studio, architect for the project, and we're here to show you some of the refinements we made since the last time we saw you guys, as well as some of the feedback we received from the Architectural Review Board. We've highlighted the site here in the first slide. Let's go to the next one. We've updated renderings to capture some of the feedback that we received on the landscape design, some refinements of the planter boxes on the trees, plantings, etc. Next slide, please. The view from the back towards Starbucks. Some more of the green space added. A lot of the feedback we received from the Planning Commission last time and from the Architectural Review Board focused mainly on the West Broad face. If you go next, please. A lot of the feedback we received centered around activating this facade, the existing facade and the proposed facade. Next slide. We've shown a lot more of the material board, a lot more of the selected materials here in some of the plantings. We have added some of the seating that's planned for the outside the cafe. Before, I don't think we explained about the cafe space being kind of a quick bite, in and out, takeout space here with these two doors that's separate from the kitchen and the restaurant. So we've added some seating out here as well to the right, as well as added some bike parking to make it more accessible to the public, and some seating along West Broad with the benches and plantings. Next slide, please. This is from the interior courtyard. Next slide. And Little Falls, over here on the left, kind of where the existing seating was, we're adding additional seating there for that cafe space outside of the interior courtyard space. Next slide. You can start to see some out here. Next slide. And this is from the parking lot. Starting to show some of the seating out that way. Next slide. This is a color palette, kind of a more rustic palette, and it's showing some of the materials and the warm tones we're looking to use on the facade. Next slide. Karen, if you want to take it over.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Thank you. It's Karen White with Walter Phillips. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I wanted to walk through some of the site changes and the waivers that we're requesting. So here's our updated rendering, and we've tried to bullet point some changes that we've made since we've seen you last. I think one of the big changes we've made is the landscaping and the proposed trees. So we now have a 12% tree canopy coverage. We had a lot of comments from all different groups about that landscape buffer, we'll call it, between the parking and the restaurant. So what we did there is we added some shrubs to screen any parking lot lighting, and we did remove those planters around those trees. So those trees will be planted in natural ground now, and they're all now 6 canopy trees proposed in that strip there. We added some additional bike parking. You'll see on the last image there was 3 we've added on Broad Street. 3 racks, so 6 spaces, and then we have another 5 racks or 10 spaces along Little Falls. We did provide some benches along West Broad Street, public-facing benches. We did provide some on-site loading and signage that I'll get into to kind of really address how we believe the loading will work. And then by adding some of this more green space, we did reduce impervious area to a total of 12% from existing. So next slide, please. This is a quick summary of the waivers we are requesting. There are 6 of them, and I'm going to walk through each of them pretty quickly. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So here, these are the waivers that summarize or talk about landscaping. So I think as we discussed previously, we are requesting a waiver of the perimeter parking lot landscaping adjacent to public streets. That's due to the existing parking lot. There's an existing transformer and that sidewalk, but we are adding 2 proposed street trees along Little Falls, just down adjacent to the building, not technically adjacent to the parking lot. We're requesting a waiver of the perimeter parking lot landscaping adjacent to the adjacent property to the north. That landscape strip you see there is actually on the adjacent property. So we can't plant any additional trees in there. There are 2 trees there today, and we are proposing to keep that portion of the existing parking lot, which is why we are requesting that waiver. We are requesting waiver interior parking lot landscaping. That has to do with just, as noted, we are requesting a parking reduction. So we didn't want to lose more parking spaces. But again, we feel like since it is a smaller parking lot, only parking aisle parking. We do have trees lining our two sides, the west side there. We have the full buffer, and then we've created that new buffer we talked about on the south side, which will have some shade into the parking lot. So we are requesting that waiver. And then the lighting waiver here, what we've talked to staff about is that we will be doing some lighting. We're just going to deal with it during the building permit process. So there will be some lighting. We are proposing some lights mounted on the buildings facing towards the parking lot, and that will then be evaluated as part of the building permit, is the plan for that. So it's technically a waiver here as part of the site plan. Next slide, please. Here's just the parking waiver. So it's 65% reduction proposed. There's 95 spaces required, and you can kind of see in red here, there is just a large area that we are counting, that we're using to calculate this requirement. So it includes the indoor area and all that outdoor space, which might have more spread out tables than you would if it was an indoor space. It is seasonal, so it is a larger reduction, but we do feel like, actually the TDM explains why we do feel like it's adequate. There's a lot of, some public parking nearby. There's the bus system right out front. We have added some, as you can kind of see, there's some 15-minute parking signs, which could be used for like an Uber pickup or drop off. And we haven't added some additional bike racks because we do think people will bike to the site. Next slide, please. So these next slides just show the loading. So what we've done here is that, loading will occur. There'll be hours for loading, which is from 6 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. So what we've done here is created signage for there's 9 spaces towards the back of the site near that's the dumpster enclosure back there, where these trucks can pull in and maneuver when the parking lot might even be probably pretty empty, but really keeping those spaces empty during those morning hours so these trucks can come in and maneuver. Here's the truck entering the site. If the next slide, please, is the truck exiting, kind of entering, so they could kind of come to that back here, park, turn around, and exit. And then the next slide here is just showing how the trash truck would work. So that would just pull in, they would roll the dumpster out, they could flip the dumpster. If you next slide. And then they'd have to do kind of a 3-point turn, but could turn around and back out. So those spaces, and I believe it's 4 spaces on the north side and 5 on the south, that would be clear in those hours, and so the truck could maneuver. But it is technically, obviously, a waiver of a standard space at all times. So we're requesting that waiver. Next slide. And then, so that was the summary of the waivers we're requesting and the changes we've made. Just quickly, the next steps. So we did receive comments last week. We have worked with staff already. We've talked to Public Works about the sanitary lateral comments they had, have provided some calculations. They asked for some additional information on our construction entrance, erosion sediment control plan, which we were working with and will address. We will plan to address all those comments and resubmit. We're going to purchase our water quality credits that we're meeting to meet the requirements. And then we have to post bonds, and then hopefully we'll get technical approval on the site plan as well. So I think that's it. I think the next slide is just the end. So I'm here. Any questions you have? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments from the applicant? No. Okay, so did we want to hear any public comments before we go to discussion by commissioners?
Yeah, there are 2 ways you could do it. You could do clarifying questions now and then take public comment, or you could take public comment to open it.
Any preference? Okay. All right, let's go to public comments. So this is a public hearing, so we'll open this to the public. I believe we have one announced speaker, Mr. Trainer.
That's right, Mr. Chair. Peruz Khan Malik.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Piruz Khan Malik, 609 Park Avenue. I'm here actually to speak about this great project, and I want to give my full support. I think it's a great project. It has improved a lot. with the recent changes they have made, especially the very visible area of the Broad Street part, where they added some plants, some seatings, and I was talking to the owner that they probably put some umbrellas and even make it more inviting. The whole project in the back is fantastic, but I was really concerned about what's going to be on Broad Street, but they have done a great job. And I think that overall, this project would actually, I believe, bring a lot of people from other jurisdictions like Tyson's Corner or maybe even Arlington. I spend a lot of my time going to restaurants in Arlington or Falls Church, and actually the existing place of the owner at the Dominion Beer and Wine is one of my favorite. And the reason for that, I like to talk about it a little bit. And that's why I get very excited when I see something like that is coming in a bigger size over here, because they need a little more space there, definitely. I'm a very picky customer, actually, and normally I pay very attention to details. The amount of details they have used in their place, the existing place at the Dominion Beer and Wine, is amazing. I mean, if you go there, if you pay attention to the work they have done on the ceiling, even the way they picked up the air conditioning that matches the rest of the design that's attached to the ceiling is absolutely great. Their service is great. Their food is fantastic. The way they handle their business is, I would say, is top in City of Falls Church. And the way they handle the customers, the way they handle the dishes, the way they wipe up all the glasses before they put it there for serving or whatnot, the way they take their time to serve the customer, giving filtered water, which you don't see normally in places like that. So in general, when I look at all of that beautiful, the ambience they have created, so I get very excited to see that. I'm sure that they would do something like that over at this project also. So I just wanted to say a few words about that, and with that, I would just would think that this project is great. It's a big value add to our city, and I would encourage the Planning Commission to go ahead and approve the project. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice day.
Do we have any other speakers?
No, Mr. Chair, that was the only speaker I had registered.
Is there any other member of the public who would like to address this item? Seeing none, we'll close this item to the public. And so now I think we can go on to comments and questions and statements from commissioners. Who would like to go first? Mr. Prentice?
Thank you. Thank you to the applicant. I agree. This is a cool project. I like the quirkiness of it. And I think it's obviously really needed given the site and the complexity of it. So I like all that stuff. I'm in favor of the parking reduction and the waivers for the most part. My only question, I think, is for staff, Mr. Holmworth. It seemed like there's a lot of comments in the Development Review Committee report, and you said that you're going to address those administratively at some point there. Are there a lot of comments? It struck me that there was quite a few. Is it characteristic of something like this?
Most of those are, the response from the reviewer is that they've been resolved. But there is a few, planning, for example, all we've really labeled are labeling comments that can just be revised in a next submission. Karen had mentioned earlier that much of the comments that came out of Public Works were regards to the sanitary lateral connections, things that have to be sorted, the construction management plan. These are all things that are generally taken care of post-action. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, there's a lot to like here. I think it's great. Thanks.
Okay. Sharon, would you like to go next?
So thank you. I really appreciate the changes to this. I'm really excited about the project itself. I think it's definitely a great adaptive reuse of something that is currently blighted in the center of Falls Church, unfortunately. I I did want to make a comment or a question in that there was a degree of openness or transparency along the north facade that in the previous iteration had more glazing so that at night you could kind of see the action inside. And because there's so much outdoor seasonal seating, it would seem more inviting as you're approaching as a pedestrian from Little Falls to be able to kind of see that activity and see the light spilling out into that seating area and see people there. I think it might resolve some of the perceived safety issues that if it is darker, right? Because there is less light spilling out and less visual of what is happening inside. Just because the glazing that is showing now is on doors, so you can't really have seating in front of those, and then you just have smaller side lights on either side of those terrace doors. So I really appreciated the previous iteration of that elevation, just to have more glazing and more transparency so that there's more activity that's visible from the pedestrian side of things. But I am really excited about overall the changes that you're making, especially with that eave that comes out and having kind of an outdoor seating area. It seems like it might be an opportunity to have some heated seating, outdoor seating when it is colder. But then that brings me to the other side of the site, which is all of that open seating that's under umbrellas, it looks like, on the west side, which would be on gravel right now? Is it on gravel? Crushed gravel? I'm curious if there's a program for that environment, even on like the less hot or less warm months, right? To kind of activate that space, because it's a large open space that may be just vacant during the winter months, right?
Do you want?
In order to pay the rent, I have to have that activated 365 days a year, hopefully. We will have, fire pits out there, and there's a lot of different things we can do, especially in the winter months, because the winter months, it's going to be tough. Summer is not going to be hard, but
Right.
winter is going to be tough. And I think if we activate with fire pits, get people blankets, serve hot drinks, stuff like that, we definitely are going to put our heads together to make sure that is activated during the winter, because that is going to be tough. But we got rent to pay, so we have to figure something out.
Sure. No, I was curious. I kept thinking bocce court.
Yeah,
I was like, wow, it's a really long, narrow
do-
spot. But yeah.
I do remember a comment in the first meeting that, I think someone was concerned that it was going to be empty.
Yeah.
That's not going to be empty. Even at Dominion, when it's 30 degrees outside, people still want to sit outside. This project gives us a kind of a clean slate to start from scratch and to make it a great outdoor place even during the wintertime and the cold months. Is it going to be perfect when it's 30 degrees? No, but obviously the winters have been a little bit milder, so that's really what we're thinking is milder winters, activating it during the wintertime, and to make sure that we're getting that revenue year round. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Now, before you walk away.
Yeah.
So the pedestrian access, there isn't any pedestrian access to the Broaddale shopping area. Is there a reason why that you don't want that access?
Quite frankly, I think, the tow truck situation, we don't want customers getting towed.
Yeah.
We don't want them, when there's limited parking in the city and stuff like that, you don't want our customers park there and then come
then
over
get
to our
towed.
spot. I'm not worried about that people parking and going there, because I don't think that's going to happen. I think people will park there and then come to us, and then they'll get towed, and then they won't come patronize our place or their place. It's just not a great experience when someone does get towed. I think that's the main reason.
Yeah.
And there is access on the Christian Science Room side. There is just right there. So I don't think it's going to be impossible for anyone coming from the Broaddale if they really want to, because there is access, just not on our property line.
Right.
Yeah. If I actually went by today, well, I've been going to the site quite frequently, and people do use that. That's right outside of our property
It's like
line.
a cut through.
There's an entrance or a gap that people walk through.
I would be curious too, if that property ever got redeveloped, if there would be a way to maintain some kind of future access or easement, right?
Sure.
Okay,
I'm not opposed to it at all.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that was all I had. I was a little bit confused by the stucco component, because I liked what you did at the front entry off of Little Falls that has the bougainvillea or the azalea that is kind of creeping up, and so you don't see that big flat wall of stucco. And so I was curious how you were going to treat that along West Broad as well to kind of break up that rustic stucco look, because it seems like it's a little bit foreign in that neighborhood. And I do like, trust me, I like the materials and I like the look and feel that you're going for. I'm just a little confused by the stucco, the rustic stucco and the big expanse of it along West Broad.
If you
maybe-
pan up to the west elevation, it should be 3 or 4 slides up. Or West Broad elevation, sorry. One more. There we
There,
go.
that one, yeah.
Sure. So we thought stucco was an upgraded material from the fiber cement material that you see around the city. Having more of a stone, we gives a little more flexibility with what we can do with it. A few less joints than fiber cement panel is going to have, and give it a little more texture and life to it than just a flat painted fiber cement. We tie that in with a stone at the base, water table, and gives us an opportunity to break it above the windows and kind of tie in some warmer tones. We thought it was just a better treatment with a little more texture to it than a flat fiber cement.
Okay. No, I like the texture. I just, maybe I'm responding to the contrast in the color right now, just in the rendering, and maybe it'll appear differently in real life.
Really good.
And is there actually seating going to be available on West Broad?
Yeah, if Jeff, I don't know if you can go to one of the site plans for me, or, sorry, you're not, Jack.
Is there enough space to do
Is that one of the
There
slides?
is.
Oh, there
We're
is,
set back
okay.
25 feet or so from the street there.
Yeah.
We're not thinking it's going to be a banquet table there, but two top,
two-top.
4 top kind of thing, to grab a quick bite and have lunch.
Do you mean is that one of the slides you're talking about, or the,
There
or
should be a
the
site plan.
attachment?
Yeah, it's kind of, no, it's just one of the slides, one of Karen's slides.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
The
think
one that
that's one
summarizes the site
There we go.
changes. There you
That
go.
Yeah,
one,
you
yeah.
can start to see there, it doesn't show the tables on this, but we've got 2 pockets of tables. You have the 2 arrows on the south face or the West Broad facade. Right there, we've got some tables around that. And then to the right of that, where these other 2 arrows are, there's also going to be a little pocket of the brick there where we'll have some tables and outdoor dining that addresses the cafe.
I think that's a great reuse of that little pad.
It is,
So,
it's going to be a very nice little quaint stopover spot for getting ready for the evening dining.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate it. I'm generally in favor of the
Application.
application. Yeah, and all of the attachments to it. Thank you.
Okay, Andrea.
We can go. I will join my colleagues in also being excited about this project. I think it will be a big improvement, very popular in the city, huge improvement for this, as you said, blighted area of our downtown, which is unfortunate. Can we go back to the West Broad elevation? I noticed the little wall that you have in this rendering in the presentation, but I'm just curious if you're planning that little wall, is that like a sort of a patio area that you're developing, or is
The brick wall and the red brick wall with the bench next to it's existing there.
It's
it's the
hidden
existing
now.
wall. I
You can't
see.
see it.
Okay.
It's existing and kind of, it would be closed off there, so you're not accessing the courtyard from that side. But yes, that will remain. We'll add some plantings there along that.
So are you planning any seating in that area in front of the stucco
No, it's,
building?
the wall steps closer to the street there, so we're
Okay.
not thinking that that's going to have any seating in that spot. We're adding some benches along that. We've got at least one there. So we're thinking it's just kind of pedestrian seating, but not necessarily dedicated seating to address the cafe. If you
Okay.
can have a sandwich on a bench, that's probably not a problem, but
I think that wall is in not great condition. Is that correct? So you're
it would need to be
planning on
pointed up and repaired, yes.
repairing it. Yeah, great. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
I'm sure you've been paying attention to Meeting House and how they're our other adaptive reuse project. They're now offering valet parking. They probably have a similar-ish amount of parking, also very popular new local location. So just wondering if you have thought about reaching out to, I don't know, Kaiser or any other, like other parking arrangements, maybe mainly for staff? Or are you expecting staff to park in this lot?
We've spoken to a few people, especially the Harris Teeter lower garage.
Yeah,
It's
Harris Teeter would
empty.
be great.
It's empty all the time. When it comes to staff, to be honest, we have plenty of parking at Dominion, and we're joking, but kind of serious that, they could park there, get their steps back.
Scooters.
Yes.
They don't get enough steps on the stairs?
At Dominion they do, but here it's going to be a lot more efficient, which is part of the reason we want to do this, because
Yeah.
the outside is difficult at Dominion, but this should be a lot easier. But yes, it's been in discussion about the ground floor of the Harris Teeter parking lot, since it is pretty much empty 24 hours a day.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. I think you all have maybe a better situation than Godfrey's does, because you have a lot more options right immediately around you,
I
underused parking lots. So
I think so.
I'm glad you're pursuing those conversations.
A little difficult. I think our activation of the cafe for walkability and drivability to get a quick bite will be really well. It will work well.
Okay, great. I don't have any other comments. I'm excited about the project and looking forward to seeing it come to life.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you have something else?
Yeah, just one other question. I was looking at the street view on Google. There's a pretty grim bus stop there. There's just a pole with a sign on it. I didn't see it addressed in the materials. Is there any treatment for that? Are we thinking about it? Is it in the TDM plan? Are we any
We're not
incorporation of the bus stop
proposing-
into the site plan? Or-
We're not proposing any changes to the bus stop with the project.
I think as staff, one of the challenges we have with some of the bus stops around downtown is that they're actually located near or oftentimes, unfortunately, in the raised planter beds. So not only in this case is the front door blocked, but oftentimes the rear door is blocked as well. And so you'll see passengers trying to get off the bus or on the bus having to walk through the landscaping. One of the things we might look at if this proceeds to approval and construction, if that western driveway along Broad Street isn't being used by this project, we may look at that as a possible relocation for the bus stop. But I think that would be on a staff initiative versus maybe an applicant initiative.
I didn't think about it because I didn't see it in the materials, but it is, again, there's nothing there. I take that bus all the time, and a lot of people get off and on there. I think it's a lot of people going to Harris Teeter, so maybe something to think about. Maybe.
Yeah, it's in the middle of the town. It's one of the more popular spots, like you said, because not only is there the grocer, but obviously also the apartments as well.
Will there be I know it's years into the future, but a bus rapid transit, when that comes through, will there be a stop anywhere close to?
I know
this
we've
location?
looked at the proposed locations. There are generally sort of proposed to be fewer stops for the BRT than there are today. I
Right.
think one of the problems it's a funny thing about bus service in the U.S. There tend to be actually too many bus stops. There aren't enough buses, but there are too many bus stops. And so you get on the bus and it stops every block and it takes forever to get anywhere. So I think I can't remember the exact number of stops that would be along West Broad Street, but it's probably at least 4 and probably not more than 8. And I can't remember if this made the list, but if not, it's certainly one we want to look at.
Okay. You okay? My turn. All right. So context for this, been echoed here by my colleagues. It's a small property that's currently acknowledged as an eyesore, so there's a lot of momentum behind wanting to see this happen. It's especially since it's a local business that proved itself successful, another location and which contributes to civic improvement. I think those are all the things that were in my mind as I approached this. I appreciate from our first meeting that the applicant has increased the bike parking. I think you'll probably find that you'll want even more, but I appreciate the increase that was made. I like that there's been no objections from the neighbors. It's positive. I think the main issue that I had still open in my mind was the addition to the motion with the administrative approval. And as I looked through especially the Department of Public Works comments, there were 7 items there that were still not resolved. And I'm just wondering, have some of, or maybe all of these been resolved in discussion subsequent to when this staff report came out?
Right, so this was a fairly quick turnaround from submission to tonight. And so a lot of the comments were, let's see, that we did a two-week review between the submission and receiving comments from staff. And after that, when we had given the applicant the comments, they had about, 6 days to work with staff on addressing and how they might go about addressing them. They did provide a good turnaround in providing new calcs for a lot of the stormwater concerns. And there is a plan in place for addressing those outlying comments, I guess through a post, like we had mentioned before, a post-action submittal.
And, Mr. Chair, if I might, Karen White, the engineer for the applicant, she and I have been talking on the phone to get these things resolved. I know she's been working with the city engineer as well. Karen, if you're still on the line, can you talk about sort of where you are working those out?
Yeah, so Alan Dalton and I spoke earlier, I think it was on Monday, I guess I'll say now, to review. We went back and forth about the sanitary comments. He asked for some calculations, which we provided. There's still some, and he said, I addressed that. There's still some coordination we're doing with the building MEP, because we have the building system that we have to coordinate with to finalize. So that's what we're kind of working out now. But Alan did seem, what I submitted was acceptable. I think the other outstanding one was about the construction entrance and how that's really going to work. We talked briefly. I think, as he mentioned in his comment, we're probably going to talk to the site inspector, and that's really just about. There's a technical construction entrance you need to how trucks enter and exit so they don't bring sediment into the roadway. And he just wants to make sure we can do this in a way that functions well, and that also will invite the site, that also might involve the site inspector, just a conversation. So I didn't see any, when we spoke, I don't think that we didn't have any issues that this couldn't be easily resolved with the resubmission. And honestly, my plan was we need this additional information from the mechanical engineer. We're going to get our plans tightened up. We would actually meet with staff before we resubmit to make sure we're addressing all their comments, have a quick meeting and show them everything, and then resubmit, and hopefully everything would be addressed.
Did we get the issue resolved of the location of the lateral for the sanitary? I know there was Little Falls versus Broad Street, and I think there was a preference for Broad Street. Did that get resolved to your satisfaction?
We're still working out which way it could go. There are some, again, going kind of back to where it comes out of where the elevation's coming out of the building and coordinating with that. So I think that actually still does need to be finalized, but I don't see any concerns with either direction. It's really just, it's going to really impact, like the construction is the biggest part of that, which are you going to, disturb Little Falls versus Broad Street? I think we'd rather do construction in Little Falls. It'd just be a little easier from a construction traffic management perspective. But I think that that's what we need to kind of get these final numbers from the MEP and speak with Public Works and kind of just figure out the best way to go. But I don't see either one being a problem going in either direction or any concerns with either direction.
And staff in agreement with that?
Yeah, this kind of sort of final technical detail is something that typically gets worked out as part of the building permit as well as the trade permits. Hearing that the applicant can take the lateral in either direction, it becomes sort of a balancing of sort of which main does it connect to, what's the impact on traffic management, and where does that fall out in the balance.
Yeah, my main concern was that obviously we're going to have a certain amount of administrative approvals that are going to be required. But the question becomes, when does that become so large that, we have to put some identification to it? But if you're happy and the applicant is happy that we're making sufficient progress that we're not going to have, some kind of huge issue come back to us, then I guess I'm comfortable with it. But again, I think it's in the context of what's at this location, what's going in, the need for it, and all of this is kind of influencing how I look at the list of items that are still not resolved, and hopefully get some confidence that they can be resolved. So I guess that's all I have. So unless there are any other comments, if someone would like to go ahead and proceed with a motion, I think we're at that point.
You can do it. Let's see. Whereas the Planning Commission finds approval of the site plan and related waivers and modifications meets all applicable requirements of Division 7 Site Plans, Chapters 48-1137, and whereas the requested waivers and modifications would not be substantially detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of the community, and whereas the proposed motion is a partial demolition and renovation of a relatively small corner lot and is largely reusing many of the existing site features and layout for an indoor and outdoor restaurant. And now, therefore, I move that the Planning Commission approve site plan application number 2023-0650 to permit the construction and renovation of the Stratford Motor Lodge into a new indoor-outdoor restaurant, including the following waivers. 1, waiver of perimeter parking lot landscaping adjacent to public streets along Little Falls Street, Section 48-1181, parentheses 1, close parentheses. 2, waiver of perimeter parking lot landscaping adjacent to abutting properties along northern boundary, Section 48-1181, parentheses 2. 3, waiver of interior parking lot landscaping requirements, Section 48-1182. 4, waiver of site plan requirement for lighting plan noting all artificial light sources and structural supports, Section 48-1137, parentheses 28. Condition that at prime building permit, all lighting code, Section 14, Article 5 requirements shall be met pursuant to site plan, Section 48-1137 requirements. 5, waiver of the off-street loading space, Section 48-934. 6, waiver requested for a parking reduction of 65%, Section 48-970. Contingent upon the applicant resubmitting an updated final site plan that 1, addresses minor technical comments as noted in the attached staff comment table to be reviewed and administratively approved by the planning director, and 2, revises the sanitary sewer lateral constructions and construction management plans to address comments as noted in the attached staff comment table to be reviewed, administratively approved by the Public Works Director.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Friedlander on the second. Before we take a vote, I neglected to mention that we got comments from the Architectural Advisory Board. I believe they voted 4-0 in favor of this project, and also the Urban Forestry Commission. And I believe most of their issues were resolved as well. So I want to just acknowledge their input and voice our appreciation. And so with that, Mr. Trainer, if you'd like to go ahead and call the vote.
Yep. Ms. Friedlander?
Yes.
Mr. Puentes?
Yes.
Ms. Comont?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Congratulations to the applicant team.
Thank you.
Thanks again, and I hope to see you guys there when we comes to fruition next year, hopefully.
Let us know when you open.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Okay, I believe we can move on to our work session item. There's a couple items there. First is the Fellows Property Concept Design Plan.
Mr. Chair, if I may, you do one remaining action item, the Planning Commission minutes from your last meeting. or from your?
Oh, the minutes, I forgot about the minutes. Okay. Someone like to move, oh, first of all, does anyone have any comments on the minutes? Edits? No? All good? Would you like to make a motion to adopt the minutes?
Yes, I move we adopt the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting on December 6, 2023.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Seeing none, we have minutes for December the 6th. Okay, with that, I believe we can now go to the Fellows property. Mr. Stoddard.
Sure, I'm happy to introduce this item, Chair and members of the commission. Let's see, we've got the staff report up on the screen. I'll hit some of the highlights, but obviously I want to save the bulk of the presentation for the project manager on this one, Alice Dorga, city staff member who's leading this through the conceptual design phase. So request, line 3 on the plan for the Planning Commission tonight is to hold a work session to review and provide comment on the conceptual design for the park. In terms of recommendations on line 9, planning staff doesn't have recommendations on the design itself, but rather we did want to call out 3 sort of principles for review. They're on line, beginning on line 18. 1, consistency with prior actions that either the council or the planning commission or the Rec and Parks Board has taken on this, which are summarized later in this report. 2, emphasizing park accessibility features, including sidewalks, street trees, crosswalks, lighting, seating, right? All those things that not only make it sort of physically possible to get there, but actually an inviting and safe process for getting there. And then also budget and timeline. And so these things are really related to the multiple hats you'll be wearing as you review this. Certainly in your role of reviewing site plans, which is something you do regularly, but also as you guys review the budget for this project, since it'll be part of the capital improvement program. By way of background, as described in the adopted park master plan, this is intended to be a neighborhood park that really emphasizes interpretive features and natural resources. You can see a list beginning on line 33 of some of the key features that are included. I won't walk through them all, but a lot of it is sort of how do people interact with the space and what kind of feel is the space supposed to have as people are enjoying it. Some of the basics about the site on line 47. The site is just under 2 acres in size, 1.95 acres. It is located at the intersection of South Oak Street and Parker Street, across the street from South Oak Elementary. The City of Falls Church is the landowner in terms of land use and zoning. It is the future land use map designation is for low-density residential. It is identified in the Parks chapter of the comprehensive plan as a future park location, and it is zoned R1A, which does allow for parks as a principal use permitted by right. The project history, there are quite a few steps in here. I'm not going to walk through all the content, but I'll at least note the milestones that have been made along the way. Most recently, Rec and Parks Board did endorse this as a concept plan for the park, what you're going to see tonight, and they're referring it out to other boards and commissions for their comments and inputs. Comprehensive plan amendment in 2016, and this was related to actions needed to acquire the property that was previously privately owned. And you can see in 2019, the action of the City Council finally acquiring the property. You all had made a positive recommendation on that acquisition. And then fiscal impact, something I noted. It can certainly be talked about tonight, and then it'll also come up in your capital improvement program work sessions. Currently, they're on line 113. The already adopted CIP includes $200,000 in prior year funding, as well as an additional $575,000 in programmed future year funding for a total project budget of $775,000. As laid out in the conceptual plan, with rough cost estimates, it does come up to a total approximate cost of almost $2 million. So obviously there's a delta there. But again, your decision tonight is to sort of inform the budget, but this isn't the sort of budget action on it. That happens as part of the regular budgeting process. And as I said, sort of the purpose for tonight is to see the conceptual plan, engage in a discussion on it, and provide comments back to staff on how to further and refine and improve it. So with that, I'll turn it over to Project Manager Alice Dorga for a presentation.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Yeah. Good evening. I'm Alice Storga. I'm a CIP project manager for DPW, and I'm here hopefully to share another exciting project, just like the last one. All right. First, next slide, please. Just a quick presentation on on this project is that I will show you a concept plan for Fellows Park. The presentation is in 4 parts: how we got here, master plan, concept plan, and what comes next. Next slide. The city bought the property in 2019. The master plan was started development from 2020 to 2022. It was adopted by the advisory board in 2022. And this past September, the Advisory Recreation Parks Board approved the concept plan. Next. The master plan. Just going to highlight a couple of things about the master plan. After various meetings with the public and the advisory board, the master plan was adopted on February 2nd, 2022. Summarizing its content, it states that this park is important to the community. The goal is to preserve and conserve Fellows property, making the park accessible, visible, and attractive, and providing interpretive opportunities for the community. Next slide. The master plan dictated that the design should be preserve and protect nature, lend itself to environmental and education, provide passive recreation with limited activity, and be accessible to all. Next slide. This is a list of all the people who contributed to the development of the concept design. Next slide. Okay, this is where I got to use my pointer. This is the concept plan. I'll give you an overall overview with details in the following slides. First, I'm going to use this board, and I've got my little pointer right there. There's a new sidewalk along Parker, which is going to extend from Ellison Street, which is up at the very top here. So it's going to connect a missing link of sidewalk and come down all the way to Oak Street. Then along Oak Street, we're going to do repairs of a retaining wall that exists there. The main entrance of the park will be here. That meets ADA requirements, and the reason for the entrance being here is also due to the slopes of the area to meet ADA requirements and to minimize disturbance within the property. The 4 champion trees that you see right here are very important to the city. And they will be protected during construction as well as after the park, and they will be a key feature to the park. The platform right here, this is a platform, will be made out of Trex material. The well, that's the well right there. That's an existing well. It's probably the only well that exists in the city of Falls Church. And we are going to try to use that as a feature that you will see in the following slides. The central plaza area right here will be accessible and central to all activities. We have a hard surface that ends at the shelter. Here, right here is a shelter. Beyond the shelter, this area right here will be a tree grove with a berry patch at the very end down here. Then the lower corner of the site near Parker will be the interactive rain garden. And the area up here in the west side is a nature preserve. Nothing will happen there except maybe some additional trees. Next slide. Okay, this is the sidewalk along Parker. As you can see right now, there's nothing going on there, but we will have to build a retaining wall about 3 or 4 foot high to minimize the cutting into the park. There will be a 5-foot sidewalk and a 5-foot buffer area for planting trees. Next slide. This is the entrance to the park. As you can see, we will have an ADA ramp, a circle much like what we have at Howard E. Herman. This is kind of a bookending the trail for Howard E. Herman, because the Howard E. Herman Trail dead ends right now at the back of the school, and this will be sort of a continuation of that park. We are looking at a specialty entrance sign, much like they have here. And so we want to make this entrance very, how should I say it, very attractive, but keep it very natural. Next slide, please. This is the path. We chose a rubberized porous material. It's ADA accessible, water drains through it, and minimizes disturbance for installation. Next slide. This is the well. There's an active well on the property which can be used for non-potable purposes, and I'll share that in a couple of slides, how we wish to do that. Next slide. This is the tree grove. We will plant trees and berry bushes which provide edible fruit and harvests. These are pawpaw trees. These are shaggy berry trees, and shaggy bark nuts. And these are the blueberry patch, which will go here, here, and here. All of this fruit should be able to be harvested and edible, and we're hoping the community will take part of that. Next slide. This is the nature preserve. Here we will do nothing but clear the invasives and maybe add more trees, but this area will be left alone. Next one. This is the rain garden. This will provide the city with a natural, because the site is going to actually reduce in the amount of non-porous surfaces, this garden is actually going to act as a credit for nutrients for the city, and it's something that we were really looking into, and it also is going to be interactive for the folks who come visit. Next slide. All right, so at the tree, you will start with a scavenger hunt, and these are animals that will be placed throughout the park, and they're made out of play equipment stuff, so they are climbable, and they're actually play equipment. Next slide. This is the fountain. The fountain will have the well will have two purposes. One will be for irrigation of the grove, and secondly, we were looking at creating a fountain that is made of natural stone that will allow people to see how the well works, because the pump can be made a hand pump, and the water will flow onto the rock, and it'll drain into the ground and out towards the grove and the rain garden. So it'll be non-potable, but it'll be very decorative. Next slide. This is the platform that we're looking at, and the shelters for picnic use and such. Go ahead. Next one. These are the specialty benches that we're looking to place. Can you go back to the slide, the previous slide once? These are the location of those specialty benches. So, all right, go ahead. Next slide. And this is the type of benches that we are looking at. Again, playground material stuff so that they can take a beating and they'll withstand it. Next slide. These are the solar lights that we are looking at placing along Parker Street to light the street. Next slide. These are the type of stones and logs that we're looking at to place around the around the garden so that it becomes an interactive with for the children and also an educational process of why we have the rain garden down there. Next slide. This area in pink is being left open and for dedication of, it's available for artwork that will be commissioned at a later point. Next one. This is the cost of the project. As you can see, this is how much we are projecting the project will cost. And as Paul mentioned, we are, right now we only have $775,000 in the budget, but it's going to go through the CIP process to try to get the additional amount or the gap between. That's it.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Looks like you put a lot of effort into developing the details, so we appreciate that. I guess it's our turn to ask questions or make comments. Any commissioners like to start out with that?
I could start.
Yeah,
I could
go ahead.
start.
Sharon?
Only because I am the liaison to the Recreation and Parks Advisory Board. Unfortunately, I wasn't, that was the one September meeting, I had a triple conflict and I couldn't make it, and that was the one to not miss. So I apologize for that, because most of this was developed prior to my time serving as liaison to the advisory board. I think there's some really good qualities about this, but I think it's important to understand that this is a concept sketch of kind of a wish list of things from the community, right? Based
Yes.
on community input. So these are the things that we would like to see. And I think it's you've done a lot of work, and a lot of great work has gone into kind of getting us to this point. And I think at this stage, it feels like it would benefit from having a landscape architect really review the site to kind of see like what are some mature shrubs. Like there's a lot of mature azaleas that are there that are just beautiful that I would hate to see those just get blown away in the planning of this. So I think there's a lot of benefit that we can gain by moving forward into that design development portion, just to kind of help us hone in on what makes the most sense in some of these scenarios, right? I'm looking at specifically the two different paths, right? There's the one for the shelter, which I think we need a shelter in the park. With some tables and things, but then to have a separate classroom kind of educational pad, I wonder if those two things can be combined and we can kind of decrease the footprint of how much construction we would be impacting on the site. So there's being an architect and a builder by trade, of course, the things that I look at are the feasibility of some things, right? Or how can we get dual efficiencies out of things? I was looking at the budget specifically, and the mobilization cost kind of jumped out at me because I was thinking, well, what is in that cost? And it's got to be the mobilization of all this heavy equipment to remove that existing stormwater retention or whatever that thing that was put in there at the back of the property for the future development of it. And I wonder if we could just abandon that and leave it in place and not spend X amount of dollars to extract some of the structure that's already there.
Right. Again, as you well know, we put together this budget based on this concept plan, and we used a lot of standardized numbers, mobilization being one, is typically 10% of the overall project. As far as the sewer line, we are abandoning it in place. We spoke with the arborist, and we talked about, will the trees be affected by that? And he said, no, as long as we plant the trees and they're young enough, they'll grow around them. So we're leaving the old storm line there. Now, there's a new storm line that goes from, Fellows Court, that goes down to Parker, that takes care of the water that's on the court, and it transports it down to Fellows. So that one we can't get rid of.
Okay, all right. And then I had some other questions just about the maintenance of that walk. You said it was going to be the porous resinous or plastic
Yeah, it's
rubberized surface because it meets ADA, but I'm curious, in a freeze-thaw environment, what's the long-term maintenance of something like that versus a DG path or something similar to what we have over in, is that Howard E. Herman? To do something like that in lieu of something that might be creating a maintenance issue down the line.
Actually, this is probably lower maintenance than what is at Howard E. Herman, because Howard E. Herman is that dust. And the
Yeah.
dust, you have to replace it every so often, roll it, take the ruts out. This permanently stays there. It's an next best thing to asphalt. It's better than asphalt. At most, all you have to do is sweep it, blow the leaves off of it. But that's all it is, all the maintenance that's required, and it's got a lifespan of about 20 years.
I think I've seen too that you might have to be vacuuming out that porosity because dirt can get trapped in it and then it no longer is
Becomes porous.
yeah, or water gets trapped within that, and it'll expand when it freezes, and so it kind of pops cracks in it. So I would be curious what the long-term,
Maintenance.
like how long, how is it performed in other locations that maybe we could take a look at. But I think overall, I think it's a great concept, and I think it'll be fun to have something that's more educational across from TJ, which has more play equipment. So I think this is a good complement to the neighborhood and the environment in that location. But I'm in support of definitely getting the design developed further with some engineering too, to kind of see what we can use that's there. I do like the idea of the fountain with the well. For whatever reason, I forgot that there was an actual water feature. I knew that the well was there, and I remembered just the picture of the cap to it, and I was really disappointed that there wasn't something more educational there. I think it might be kind of fun to have a water element that kids could kind of play with boats and, that would also serve as irrigation for some of those plantings as well.
Yeah, the idea is that we would install an irrigation system for the trees, but it would have a separate hand pump, so that if you wanted to make the fountain work, you would pump it by hand, and it would only activate when it's being pumped by hand, and it would flow onto the rock and down into the drain system and out towards the grove. So it would sort of teach people how it used to be.
Exactly, and where that water is going, so it's not being wasted, right? So that the kids could also kind of see and learn.
Yep,
Oh, it's going to
the
take
outflow is
care of
going to
the-
be overland so that you can follow the water through the grove into the rain garden.
Oh, that'd be nice. Okay, all right. And I think that was most of my questions at this stage. So thank you.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Andrea, did you want?
I'm also a really big fan of this concept. There's so many great elements that you've incorporated, all of these like whimsical learning opportunities. I think it will be very popular, especially right across from the school. So some of my questions are actually about the connections around the property, connections to the school. I'm thrilled that we're going to put that sidewalk in on Parker, because that is definitely a gap, especially for kids that walk, over to the school from Timber, which they do, every day, 180 days a year, or not every day, but 5 days a week. So that will be really great to have. I think I remember in our previous conversation that we talked about the low stone wall that is on Oak Street, and I think in a follow-up staff, it was described as enticing. And, I think that sidewalk there is very narrow, and it's almost totally obstructed by light poles, right? And so if it's, I think at the time I should have said, maybe we don't really need that little retaining wall, and we should have a wider sidewalk there on South Oak Street. Because I think right now, it's really impassable. I walk my dog through there, and if you have another, I think it's probably a 3-foot sidewalk with the poles in it. So curious if you all had discussed taking that wall out in order to expand the sidewalk in that area.
At this point, we had just discussed pointing up that wall and fixing it, but keeping the sidewalk as is.
Yeah, I'm going to change my vote on the wall to let's get rid of the wall and make a better sidewalk there. So if I think I might have been the person that said, oh, that's such a nice little wall. I take that back and apologize. So I'd really rather have a much better sidewalk through that area. If we can make that sidewalk wider, a 5-foot sidewalk, let's do that now as part of this project to make it a better connection. So just wanted to raise that. It is enticing, the wall, but it's pretty low. So I think if it's wall or sidewalk, better sidewalk, I would vote for the sidewalk. I would not remove the parking in that area, however, to make a sidewalk happen. I don't imagine that you would be planning to do that with the poles there anyway, because those parking spaces are really heavily used by the school. Curious, though, about connection from the school to the park, if you had thought about how we might make it feel like I don't know if it's just like a crosswalk or a mid-block crossing or something like that. Is that in the plans? I missed it.
If you could go back to the concept plan, there is further back. Right there. This is a bump
That
out
crossing there?
right here
Okay.
that crosses right directly to where there's that gate where the library used to be, or right now it's the school for
the music school.
The music
Yeah.
school. Yes, so that's a crossing right there, ADA accessible, with a bump out, like we said, on both ends of the park.
And that end, that was the next question I had. Is that end going to be an entrance to the park as well, or will you only be able to enter it at the corner with Fellows?
No, this is the current entrance right now.
Yep.
And that's going to be removed.
So just that portion of it?
Well, this whole area down through here, because it's kind of like I don't know, a semicircle.
Yep.
That's scheduled to be removed. We're going to put the bump out right here to the street, and another one right here. But this would be the entrance to the park.
Is it possible to have an entrance on the Parker and South Oak Street corner? Or is
Right
that,
here.
Yeah.
The tough thing, the two things about this entrance, we looked at it, and the only way to make it ADA accessible is if you start to zigzag back and forth.
I see.
To get up here.
It's too
and
steep of a grade.
Too steep of a grade, and at that point, you're really doing a lot of disturbance in this area. That's why we picked this, is because it minimizes the disturbance.
Okay. Well, I'm a big fan of bump outs. I guess I would just say, I don't remember. I don't think there's a stop. Is there a stop sign at Fellows?
There's a stop
on
sign
Oak?
right here.
There's a stop sign there. Is there a stop sign at the Fellows Court intersection as well? for
Here,
Oak?
yes.
There is for Oak.
No.
For, well, Oak is
Not
the
for
main
Oak.
thorough.
Okay.
But not for Oak. Oak is
Okay.
the main
So we're
thoroughfare.
going to cross them and then walk, potentially, and then walk up the block. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Well, well, you also have another crossing right up here.
Oh, there
which is
will be
gonna
a crossing there.
Yes,
Okay.
which will be higher up by the school itself, the main entrance of the school.
Okay. Yeah, I think a direct route from the school to the entrance of the park should be, something that we try to prioritize and work into the plan, because I do think the school will make use of this space, or I hope that they will. I'm really glad that we're keeping the rear of this property as a nature preserve. I was walking my dog the other day and I saw a coyote pursued by a flock of crows running through the neighborhood. And, we have that kind of wildlife in the city and they need a place to go. And so I'm glad that maybe we won't have coyotes in there, but other animals need an undisturbed space, and there's not that much of that left. So I'm glad we're keeping that as it is. I also had questions about the rubberized porous pavement, so like Sharon, interested in how that holds up over time, and what other alternatives we might have to that. It looks very nice and very polished and clean, and I think from a tripping hazard standpoint, that's definitely the best choice that you can make. So it will be access-wise smooth and should be pretty reliable. But I do wonder about some of the issues that she raised.
One of our concerns was we looked into, porous concrete, we looked into porous pavers, and even just the mulch. Mulch heavy maintenance. You have to redo that every year, and if it gets a little wet, it becomes very hard for ADA to. If you're going to push a wheelchair, it almost becomes impossible.
Yeah.
Bricks. The problem we have with this area is, as you mentioned, there's a lot of trees, a lot of beautiful azaleas, rhododendrons, and so there's a lot of root action going on. And we did not want to, with the bricks, we knew that they were going to pop out and pop up, so that was going to be a lot of maintenance. And with the asphalt or the concrete, we were thinking that we were going to have to do a lot of digging and hitting root matter. So we went with a material that would least harm the roots, also give us the flexibility of the roots being able to move it some without creating a stop, like the bricks.
A break, yeah.
That's we looked into all the surfaces that we could think of, and the board was happy with this because, like I say, is the gravel. Again, when you're pushing a wheelchair, if it gets a little wet, you have a hard time pushing, and not just a wheelchair, but a stroller or something like that.
Yeah. We don't have this in anywhere else in the city, do we?
Not in the city, but locally, there's a lot of places that are using it. There's some in Arlington and some in Fairfax, and I can get you a list of the places we looked at.
That would be helpful. I think I'm sure I've been to some of them, but I can't think of them off the top of my head.
They also use it a lot on tracks around schools and things like that.
Yes, yeah. Let's see. One comment, I don't know if we get to the point where we need to make cost savings. I love the decorative benches, again, very whimsical and interesting and creative, but we could go simpler, I guess, to start if we needed to, though. Then again, I guess when you do these projects, maybe you do them and then we aren't going to come back in 10 years and put some decorative benches in. So maybe if we want to do it right the first time, that's the way to go. But anyway, if we get down to the point where we need to, I don't know how much those cost, but I imagine they might be a little costly. All of the elements that you have, the hidden animals, the hand pump, I love that it's educational and it's also it's very friendly and creative. So really, really great selections there. Just a few more questions. Sorry, I'm almost done. The raised platform, will that be covered? It's roofed, right?
No, it's Trex, the idea is that it would be a surface so that you could either bring the children and have them sit down and a naturalist give some type of a lecture, or you could have yoga classes or Tai Chi classes or recreational type classes there during low use. So it was wide open. The only place that would have the shelter would be that would have
The shelter.
overhead would be the shelter. And the place right now, it's got such nice trees that.
Yeah, it's shaded.
It's shaded. You don't need cover from the sun.
Okay, okay.
It's basically where the old house was.
Yep. The solar lights, I'm excited about those, and I was curious about how bright they are. Have we installed those anywhere else in the city, or is this the first two?
No, these, again, we did a lot of research, and the nice thing about these lights are they are self-contained. The power pack, the panel, and the lights are all within the pole, so that you literally just put these in, and that's it. There's no wiring, there's no having to have controls or anything like that. That's why I know the people at DPW were excited about these because they are self-contained.
They're so easy, yeah. How high are they?
Well, you can get them
You can get them in different heights?
Yeah, you can get them to different heights and different brightnesses depending on what you're looking for. They are made for streets and parking lots.
And so you identified Parker Avenue as the area where you would, why Parker? Are there streetlights on Parker now, or they're not adequate?
There are a couple of streetlights on Parker, but not on the side of the park.
I see, okay. And so
And-
they don't cast enough light to sort of reach
Right.
that area?
And there are lights on Oak. As a matter of fact, the telephone poles
Yes.
that you mentioned have lights on them.
Okay. I'm excited about these, and if they work well, it would be great to have some of these maybe in on the other trails in the city that are quite dark at night. I'm sure that, there will be considerations of the light that they cast for neighboring homeowners, right? But if they're dim enough and they provide a little bit of light, that's great. We live right near Howard E. Herman. We never walk on it in the dark because it's pitch black. I mean, you really can't see anything. So it would be nice to have just a little bit of light in that area, and Cavalier Trail too. Okay, I think that is everything from me. Oh, one last question. The timeline. So you're looking at summer of 2026 for the park opening, potentially?
Yes, yes.
Construction, so construction would start in 2025, but it would be a little over a year? till-
That's about how long it took for Big Chimneys, even though that was much bigger.
Yeah, that was a
But-
bigger scale, right?
Yeah, but you got to give yourself about a year.
Okay, so it could be earlier, potentially.
It could be
Right.
earlier, yes. And if you guys are great with the CIP budget, we could,
We can make it all happen.
yeah, quicker.
And then the contingency amount, is 40% typical? Is that what we?
Well, typically, when we're at this stage, as you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, we haven't done any architectural
okay.
engineering. We're just, so yes.
So that's
we-
just the standard figure? Okay, all right, that's all for me, thank you.
Okay, Rob.
Thank you. I agree with my fellow commissioners. There's a lot of cool things here. But when I opened it up and was looking, I was really surprised at all the things that were in here. It's really innovative and struck me as something I thought was really cool and interesting. And not something I have a lot of experience in, so I learned a lot. Just a couple questions. So we've referenced the schools a lot for obvious reasons. What, I guess from a governance perspective, what's the role of the school in this? I mean, you're working with them on it? I mean, they feel like this is an asset for them? How does that come together?
It's kind of been a mixed bag in the sense that the schools, they wanted this to provide this as a resource, but it had to be a natural setting, something that could be used as an interpretive for nature. The community did not want another playground there. You know, they did not want swings and climbing stuff. They wanted it to be very natural, and that's what the master plan basically came up with. They said, we want it for interpretation and some activity, but it's got to be passive activities. So that's how it came about that. Yes, if the school wanted to use it, they could use it as for interpretation, not for recess.
Got it. So I ask is 'cause in terms of to respond to the staff comments, you know, for the budget, for the funding and review kind of element. I don't quite know how to provide funding comments on this. I mean, it all looks really cool. I'm always surprised at how much things cost, and so I was really surprised at how much this cost. And I don't know if that's a lot or if that's a little. It seemed like a lot to me. I don't know if benches and what to take out. So in terms of when we think about the funding, then I guess, and the budget, this will come down to just we'll have a trade-off discussion when we get to the CIP about things that are in, things that are out. This is competing with a lot of other things that this commission has talked about that we think are important. So, yeah, I don't know how to react to what's in here now, other than when it appears against other things that we will be thinking about for the CIP. So is there a role for the school budget in this at all, or are these just kept totally separate? Is there, I mean, not cost sharing or anything, but is there a way to think about this broadly other than just a parks project?
That may be beyond me. But
Maybe it's, yeah, for staff. I just, because part of our task was to provide reactions on the budget part.
Right, no.
I just struggle trying to figure out how to provide something educational.
Well, I think, so part of it was, right, getting reactions early to design, and it's good to hear all the positive feedback on the design to date. And I think one sort of flagging, well, construction costs are going up. We have a high contingency at this point, and so I didn't want anyone to be surprised when this comes up in the CIP process. And I think your comment about, well, we know this is a good project and it's deserving, and this is how much it needs, and then we have other good projects that are also deserving and how much they need. So I think that's a fair way to think about it, is sort of know that this is something we'll want to look at, you know, as part of the CIP, and this will give a sense of sort of, you know, why the cost escalation is in there.
Right. And just in terms of the precedent, in terms of our comments, if we like this, but does it say, well, we heard from the commission on December 21st, that 20th, whatever, that this is a project we like, therefore it's going to continue to go forward. But again, it's in the bigger context of all the other things that we want to do in the city, I guess that's my question. So the only other thing I do want to talk about then is maybe adding something to it, but it's kind of where Commissioner Coman was going around accessibility. I'm still not clear. So you said there were crossings going to the school on both Fellows Court and, are you saying there's going to be sidewalks or crosswalks, I mean, that are being added as part of this project? Or are they already there?
There's going to be crosswalks here, and there's going to be one somewhere midway between Oak and Ellis.
So those are in the that's part of this overall design? And
Yes.
everything, okay, that's great. And there may be an opportunity to, I don't know what you call it, but the path that goes along Trips Run, obviously people, you've talked about them coming down from Cavalier Trail, there's good trail connection there. It would be a shame to not have then that connection extended to this.
Yeah, well, Howard E. Herman Trail comes up through here, and it ends in the school, and then you can cut across from the school through that fence, through that gate, and it would drop you off right about here.
It actually comes up. It comes all the way out to South Oak Street, right? Howard E. Herman?
Yeah, like right around here.
Yeah.
Right there by
I'm
the bridge,
sorry.
right? By
At
the new
Timber.
bridge?
Down by the bridge, though.
Yeah, by the new bridge?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, which is down another block,
Okay.
isn't it?
Yeah, thanks. Again, I think this is really great. interested to talk about it in the larger context of all of our other priorities. Thank you.
Okay, my turn. I don't have a lot of input. This is not an area that I know much about, so I'm happy to defer to those who do spend a lot of time thinking about this and have more knowledge. I am struck by the challenge of going from 775,000 up to 1.947 for all the reasons that Rob just mentioned. I'm impressed. I look right out onto the entrance of Crossman Park from where I live, and it's amazing. It's basically just, a walking path through the woods, but it gets a lot of use, and people love it. The one challenge I see there at Crossman, and I don't know if you would have this here or not, is, and I'm an avid biker, but that trail is not very wide, and when people come down there on a bicycle, it kind of forces the people that are walking off the trail, and they get very upset. Is there any thought, especially with this rubberized porous pavement, which looks like it would be very attractive to people either on a skateboard or a bike or whatever, any discussion or thought about that, and other than just putting up a sign, no bikes allowed, which you don't like to see, but maybe that's about all you can do.
Biking is going to be tough because, with a bike you can do most anything. Skateboarding won't be very attractive because it has such high friction that it won't allow the rolling to be, as opposed to, say, asphalt or concrete. So it's not a, how should I say it? It's not a skateboarding
Friendly.
Surface.
Yeah.
But it does allow for rolling, strollers and things like that.
Okay, but there's no other conscious discussion that's been had on how to deal with that other than see what happens?
Yeah, no, not with the skateboarders, no.
Well, I meant with bikes.
Oh, but
Yeah.
the bicyclists, I'm not sure, it's not a very long entrance.
Doesn't particularly go anywhere, right? Unlike the
Yeah, I
Crossman
mean,
Trail, which,
You're talking from here to here, you're talking 150 feet.
yeah.
It's not that much.
Okay. All right, well, that's basically all I had. I think, it looks great, they're very creative, kids will love it. So question is, how much of it can we afford and when can we get it done? But we appreciate your efforts.
My pleasure.
Keep going. So, Mr. Stoddard, is there anything? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
Actually,
Sharon.
could we come back just for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
I do have some concerns just about the budget itself, and I'm curious, at this stage, knowing how it hasn't really gone through engineering and architectural design and landscape architectural design and engineering, that it almost seems like it's premature to talk about approval of a full budget when it's very conceptual. And yes, there's a 40% contingency, which is pretty standard at this stage, to try to figure it out. But I think knowing that it's a laundry list of wish list items, it would be helpful to kind of see a little bit more granular, like what X is worth, what Y is worth, what is Z worth, right? And where does that make sense? But it almost feels still premature for that it seems like we would want to proceed with the design before we can say yes to a doubling or tripling of budget, in my mind, right? Like, that's what I'm really struggling with. And I don't know how that comes through in the CIP process, only because I haven't been on the commission that long to have gone through that full process. I came in at the very tail end last time. So I'm curious how that works.
Can I? It's an interesting process. It's kind of like the chicken and the egg issue. The problem becomes is if you go to the engineering and the design and you don't have a budget, then the engineer and designer and the architect, what do they design to? And if there's no budget, they can design to whatever. And then you come back and you're kind of stuck. If you're over budget, then you have to come back and ask for more money, or you cut the program. And that's what's happened in the past. And this is why we're doing this one a little different, in that in the past, we've set a budget, we've gone engineering and design. When the engineering design is, and a lot of the costs here are things that you're not going to see on the ground, like the sidewalk and the lighting. The people don't naturally see that. They see the benches and the shelter, and they go, ooh. And a good example was big chimneys. You had a budget, then the designer came out and he started doing all this, and he did a lot of stormwater management, and the next thing you know, we were way over budget. And then we had to cut program to get where we wanted to be. So at this place, we decided to sort of do a preliminary engineering and concept plan so that we could we could have enough knowledge of what we wanted out there so that the designer could then design to something that we know we want, plus the budget that we had. So that's why we're, it's kind of a little preliminary engineering and design to get a budget that we know we can get what we want with.
Right, and if the budget's set high, or I'm not saying that it's
Right.
intentionally set high, I'm just saying that if, I know, I mean, I work in the industry, and I know
Right.
if there's an allowance there, it will be used to the penny, almost, right? Like, there might be 2 cents left. So I'm a little bit concerned in just having a blanket, yes, let's go, when we also are looking at all these other projects that are also valid that we want to move forward as well, that I wonder how much flexibility there is to releasing an approval on some and then, knowing that there might have to be an adjustment to it later. Like, I don't understand how that works.
Well, I know that the way we're thinking of proceeding is that with the money that we do have and with the approval of you and the board of the concept plan, is the next step is to go to an engineering and design firm to start the preliminary parts of it so that you can get a better grasp of what actually is going to look like. And like you said, have a landscape architect work on those issues. So that is part of the idea of it. Again, looking at the bigger picture, though, is working with people like Game Time, is getting the costs in today's dollars of what the things we want. That's what it came out to be.
Right, okay, thank you.
Can I ask one more? Sorry. One last question. I can't stop thinking about the Parker and Oak entrance, which I would like to see in it. So I guess I have a question about ADA requirements. Like, do all entrances of the park have to be ADA compliant, or can you have steps, those big steps from one entrance, or because I know you have grade there, but I just think people are going to want to come in at that location, and it feels like a miss to me to not facilitate a way for them to do that. Even right now, I mean, there is at least that asphalt drive. Like, when my family goes over there, my kids played capture the flag over there. Like, that was how we got up into it. So we don't have strollers, we don't have wheelchairs, so I very strongly support, obviously, the ADA compliant entrances. But so yeah, that's my question. Do all of the entrances have to be ADA? Could we have 2 entrances, one ADA compliant and one not?
Your official entrance has to be ADA. Now, if you have walking paths, they don't, and they can be mulch or just ground cover.
Okay.
But you do have to have access to the facilities through an ADA process.
Okay, so my recommendation would be rubberized ADA entrance, simple mulch. I think people are going to want to come in that way, and if we were going to have that sort of bump out there and make that feel like, and it doesn't need to have the entrance. What was that called?
That
The
arch?
structure, the arch.
Yeah.
Yeah, the decorative arch or anything. But I think that people will want to be able to access this park from multiple directions.
In speaking with the director of parks, Danny, I think his idea is that this park will probably get what it's designed to be, but afterwards, you sort of let people create the paths.
Desire paths.
And then you follow them and put the mulch down where they are going, as opposed to try to dictate.
That's fair. Yeah. Though that is an existing entrance now, so I don't know. People who go there might be used to walking that way already. Okay. Sorry. Just wanted to raise
Hold
that.
on. All right. A lot of good comments. Hopefully, you got some things there that are useful. Probably time for us to move on to the next item, which is the bike.
Thank you very much. Really
Okay.
appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming. I guess time to go on to the bike plan update. Did you want to introduce that, Paul?
Sure, I'll give a brief introduction. Thank you, Chair and members of the commission. Next item on your agenda is a work session on the update to the city's bicycle master plan. Of course, we have a plan on the books, and it is a council work plan item to review it and update it. It's been a number of years that we've been operating under it, and I think there's a renewed interest in investing in bicycle safety and bicycle accessibility. So, exciting time to be working on bike planning. As I mentioned, it's a request for a work session, and really the focus should be on sort of work that's been completed to date. So we've completed a level of stress analysis. We've identified proposed priority routes. We want to get Planning Commission feedback on those proposed routes. They are summarized in a table in the cover memo that's included in your packet. And Jack, in case you want to pull it up now, I think there's going to be the first attachment is the council staff report, which is I'm guessing we'll use that. And just to let the commission know, this will be coming back to you for another work session, probably in February. And by that time, staff will have taken those priority routes and put some design concepts around them, and we'll be seeking feedback on the specific designs at that future work session. Tonight's work session is about the routes themselves and which ones are the priorities to work on. With that, I'll turn it over to our lead planner, Carrie Odonino.
Thank you, Paul. Hi, I'm Carrie Odonino. Good evening, Chair Stevens and members of the Planning Commission.
Welcome.
As noted, the Planning Commission has requested to receive an update and provide feedback regarding the bicycle master plan update. Its staff is seeking concurrence to proceed with development of multiple conceptual designs for each of the priority routes and/or spot improvements. So looking at that council staff report, and based on community input and professional guidance, staff recommends proceeding with conceptual design for the east-west connection between WOD Trail and West Falls Church, East Broad Street, Northwest Street between West Broad Street and Fairfax County, Southwest Street between Fairfax County and West Broad Street, Great Falls Street, and Park Avenue between North Virginia Avenue and West Street. So for background, the city's first bike master plan was adopted in 2015, and the Virginia Tech student study was conducted in 2022. So line 20, the council work plan includes an update to the city's bike master plan, and accordingly, the proposed scope of work includes the following: updates to vision statement and goals, usage data, map of future routes, implementation section, and identifying priority improvements for implementation in the next 3 years, including cross-sections and cost estimates. Moving down to line 40, the attached report from the consultant details existing and planned bike facilities, current bike usage, and analyzes the city's bike network using a level of stress analysis. And the goal with the update is to work towards facilities of all ages and abilities, and better connect isolated clusters of lower stress routes throughout the city. The map on page 3 shows some of those islands of lower stress routes throughout the city. You can see how clusters are separated by those higher stress streets like West Broad Street, North Washington Street, West Street, Roosevelt Street. You can also see how the different clusters are sort of even further separated from one another. But so there are these networks and clusters of lower stress routes. Line 57, as listed in the timing section of this report, staff has engaged the community through various boards and commissions and general community events. This included a CACT meeting, Environmental Sustainability Council meeting, farmers market tabling, a general community meeting, tabling at the middle and high schools, and an EDA meeting. So staff assembled a table showing the priorities from those different events where input was provided or dot voting was done. Staff took that input as well as the level of traffic stress analysis to develop those priority routes to be built in the next 3 years. So line 64, the east-west connection between WNOD Trail and West Falls Church route is advancing to design under the COG Transportation Land Use Connections Technical Assistance Program. Conceptual designs for East Broad Street, North and Southwest Street, Great Falls Street, and Park Avenue between North Virginia and West Street are recommended to advance to design as part of this effort. Conceptual designs for a portion of Park Avenue are under design through the Park Avenue Great Streets project and Lincoln Avenue through the Greening of Lincoln project. In terms of fiscal impact, City Council previously appropriated $60,000 in local funds for consultant support for the update through the June budget amendment. Line 75, in terms of the schedule, city staff has added additional public meetings as well as an online survey. And staff and the consultant will come up with conceptual designs for selected routes over the next couple of months. With the online survey expected to be released in February, and adoption of the plan anticipated in April or May of 2024. So I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you. Andrea, I'm guessing you will have some comments.
I mean, I said a lot in the last one, so I'm happy to give somebody else the first turn.
There's only 4 of us tonight.
Okay, all right, I can go.
Enjoy the luxury.
Well, this is very exciting. There's so many great things here to look forward to, I would say. And I'm really glad to hear that there are things that are actually moving to design under the COG grant and otherwise. So let's see. When I was looking at the routes that you outlined, can you go back? Sorry, can you go back up to the priorities? Yes, thank you, Jack. It just makes this nice big X across the city. You know, you have West, South, and Northwest Street that come across, and then if you think of East Broad, and then Park, and then whatever we can do to connect the WNOD to the high school, that is also a nice full east-west route through the city. So. That feels like a really great starting place, a really great skeleton for the city. So I'm really glad that we're prioritizing that section of Park Avenue from the library to West Street. I think North and Southwest Street is just a really great candidate for a bike lane, and we'll be connecting to lanes in other jurisdictions. So. Lots of great things to like there. I was curious about some of the the analysis of the level of stress, because I ride on Park Avenue myself, and I don't find it particularly unstressful because I usually have drivers, impatient drivers bearing down on me or passing me close. Just a lot of cars through that section, which maybe is something that we need to think about changing in the future. So if I was riding on that with my kids, I would, and they're bigger now, but I still would not, I don't feel like it's low stress for me, and I don't feel like it would definitely not be low stress if I was with them. So I know it said it was all ages and abilities, but what kinds of inputs are they looking at to make those determinations? Just the number of cars, the speed limit, the actual speeds, or how are they deciding?
We've gotten that comment from several people that there are concerns about some of the LTS ratings, and in particular Park. Speed was one of the components.
It is low speed through there. It's true, but it's like pretty heavy volume and a lot of impatient people is what has been my experience. I ride on that a lot, particularly the connection from the library through over to City Hall. That just like even just that short stretch, or over to North Side and Maple Avenue. Even just that short stretch, you're interacting with a lot of cars if you're in the road. And I'm just asking about this because if the intention is like Sharrows are good enough for a low stress route, or level, routes that have low levels of stress, like I don't feel like that's an accurate description of that road, and I don't feel like Sharrows are the right solution, really, maybe anywhere from what I'm reading. So I wouldn't want us to say on all these low stress routes, like we can just paint some Sharrows on the road and call it a bike network, because that's not, I think, what advocates in the city are after. That's definitely not what I'm interested in. So, and I'm sure you as staff feel the same way, and I understand there are trade-offs, that we all have to consider. But I think if we want to be serious about building a bicycle network, it needs to really feel like something that is going to help make people feel safe and make them want to use it. So I just wanted to ask those questions and make that comment. But otherwise, I mean, I don't know. I don't have a lot else to say about this, because the recommendations are just like everything on my wish list. So I would love to see them all happen. I just want to see them happen in a way that, is substantive and not just Sharrows on the road.
Okay, thank you. Rob, you jump in?
Not surprising, I agree. I hate Sharrows. I think everybody does now. It's become trendy to hate Sharrows. And I think you're right. You hit it on the head that, that I think part of the reason Park feels unsafe to bike on is because we rely on those. So, as much as we can have dedicated spaces for the bikes, I think is critical for all the reasons that Ms. Comont mentioned. So, but in general, I'm glad we're doing this. I think that it really matters. I'm not clear, though. I guess we're going to talk about some of the details when we start doing the design, right? But East Broad is mentioned as a priority street, and I couldn't tell from the technical memo if we're actually talking about improvements on East Broad or the crossings of East Broad. Like I think you mentioned Cherry and one or two other low-stress places. What is there a plan or a strategy for East Broad now, or is that just the crossings there?
The thought is to look at repurposing space on East Broad itself.
To repurpose what is now
Like travel lane.
A road diet.
on East
Right.
Broad.
Right. So, right, to look at that, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I missed
Yeah, I
that.
think-
I missed that in the materials. Is that part of is that what's written now, or is that this is coming later?
I think it's to be looked at as part of design, and I want to sort of put one thing out there. I think people say, "Oh my gosh, Broad Street, so many cars," but if you actually sort of take the time to sort of really observe how East Broad works, when it gets to Washington, things get a little sort of tight feeling. When you're closer to Seven Corners, things feel a little bit tight, but there's a long stretch that's probably a mile or more in between, where there's pretty low volume, not a lot of traffic signals,
And the lanes are very wide.
It's very easy to drive that section of road, and it probably doesn't need all those travel lanes to accommodate all the cars that are on it today. And it's something we're going to look at, but I think there's the real possibility of thinking about maybe there's another way to use all that space out there.
Great. I think it's terrific. I look forward to next steps. Thanks.
Can I ask one follow-up question on that East Broad section? So because it gets busier as you approach, if we're able to figure out something to do in East Broad, is there a way to maybe to connect? Because I think the goal would be to connect East Broad to Park, right, or at the State Theater, so you can have a full like east-west route. So would sort of bringing people down Lawton and bringing them through Madison Park or something like that be an option to make that connection? I know it's like a little bit of a zigzag, but I don't know, as a cyclist, I would feel safe riding on East Broad, but I think as you approach Washington Street, that sense of safety would probably be diminished. And then you would have to take a ride on Washington and go up, I guess, the sidewalk or something to get to Park Avenue. So just thinking about that last little connection between those two potential routes, I think maybe Madison Park, something in that area. There is that driveway through Madison Park, so I know we have some right-of-way through there, and I think there's a path already. So I don't know. Obviously, this is like the detailed technical stuff that's going to be the hard thing to figure out that we can talk about at a later time, but just I would love to see a full like east-west route, East Broad to Park to the West Falls. Thanks.
Thank you. I actually echo a lot of those comments. I live in an island that is like almost off of this map, off of Hillwood, and so I know that there's not a lot of cycling going on that goes to the high school at all, like any of those cycling days to TJ or to Oak Street or to the middle school. That doesn't happen from this side, only because East Broad, there's no safe place for kids to go across, and maybe Cherry.
That's where the
but
Bike
when
Plus went, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not ideal whatsoever. But I know we're talking about the bike program, but I think it's also important when we're looking at the design to be overlaying with the pedestrian safety as well, because a lot of these areas also have very thin sidewalks where you've got the telephone pole, the guy wires, everything else, and you don't even have 3 feet clear on the sidewalk. So pedestrians and strollers are going into the street on East Broad. So it's kind of, I get excited for bike lanes and things like that, but I think we have to look at this holistically. I'm assuming that's happening because we're only talking about bikes. I feel like I can't really talk about the pedestrians as well, but I think it's really important to look at that. I did appreciate the Strava heat map. And I would be curious how that overlays, because those are more experienced bikers, and a lot of those bikers are coming from Fairfax County south of Hillwood. It looked like, when they were coming up and through the city to get to the W&OD trail. I'd be curious what the overlay of that to the level of stress diagrams on our city streets, and how the proposed priorities, if that shifts any of those proposed priorities, right? Because you've already got corridors that people are using, and yes, they might be more experienced cyclists, but it might be good to kind of take those routes that they're using and make those more safer, and then by the nature of that, the level of stress for the other components and the connectivity across the city starts to alleviate itself in conjunction with that. So we're not fighting the more experienced travelers, right? Like I think there's some duplicity there. And so I'd be curious to see what that overlay is and how that is reflected in what our priorities are. So, thank you.
Okay, a few thoughts. First of all, I'm really encouraged to see this work going on, so encourage you to charge ahead. You had asked us for input on the priority list, and that's fine. The 5 that are there are all very much needed, and I think will do a lot to help bicycle transportation in the city. But I wouldn't want to see a selection of routes kind of as priorities kind of prevent us from taking opportunistic advantage as things come along. And I'm thinking of a situation like Quinn's, as that came along, we saw there was an opportunity to improve Maple Avenue, at least for a small stretch there. And so I wouldn't want to have the plan say, well, that's outside the priorities. We can't look at that. So I would just maybe have something in the plan that says, yes, these are priorities. These are things that, the community has gotten behind. But we need to be flexible as events occur going forward so that it doesn't preclude taking advantage of new things that come along. Another example that might fit into that category is North Washington Street, where we have the $22 million that's going to be awarded to the city. I hope, we haven't seen any details yet. I'm sure the planning still is very much underway, or maybe even has to take place at some point. But I would certainly like a big piece of that to be maybe a protected bike lane on North Washington. Especially since Arlington has plans eventually to put a new entrance there at that station. That could very well become an area of a car-free zone or a no-car zone. And we wouldn't want the fact that it's not mentioned somewhere in a bike plan to in any way not facilitate taking advantage of that type of an opportunity. Admittedly, it's going to be a number of years out into the future. Couple of other thoughts. Page 2, I think this is the technical statement, which was good, that 58-page document. There's a lot of interesting things in there. It talks about connectivity as part of the vision statement. And I might suggest give some thought to expanding that to include some other kind of major initiatives within the city. I think the vice mayor mentioned this on October 1st when this was before city council. And in my own mind, what that usually translates into is our recently passed climate action plan. So obviously having a good, robust bike situation in the city will help reduce vehicle miles traveled, and that's a good way to at least put a dent in our greenhouse gas emissions. So it'd be nice to, rather than have silos and say, well, this is just biking, we don't do anything else. Well, actually, this ties very nicely to the climate plan. It also ties to affordable housing in the sense that if we have an area that's a car-free zone, somebody can allocate more of their limited budget to housing if they don't have to have a car. So these may be a couple of thoughts on how we can kind of crosswalk the bike plan into other kind of major initiatives that the city has underway. Be interesting. Is there anything so far in the CIP that relates to this, or is it just too early that we need the plans first before we could then translate it into CIP?
No, so that process of updating the CIP sheets is underway, and staff has sort of put placeholders in for pre-planning for North Washington, which you mentioned earlier. Hoping to get a little bit of pre-planning sort of going before the actual grant starts, and then we have put each of these, and they're not final, but each of these sort of priority routes in there as a line in the multimodal sheet so that they're sort of in there. So we have sort of started to do that, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. That'll it's real when you start to see it in a budget. I think that is all I had by way of profound comments. Okay. Thank you very much for your excellent work. And are there any other questions or comments?
Can I just ask, so on the timing, so in February. We will see you again in February, and that will be a review of priority improvements, including routes and facility design for all of these for all of the recommended routes on the list, the ones that are moving to design. You'll have that by February?
I'm hoping so. I don't have, because we got bumped from council on the 11th, so I don't have sort of feedback from them. So
Oh,
I
that's right,
think
the power
February,
outage.
as soon as I can sort of direct the consultant to, like, this is what we're doing, then I think we can kind of, but the next time I see you, I probably will have the routes. the
That's great.
Concept.
That's aggressive. You guys are moving fast. I really appreciate all the hard work that you've been doing on this. It'll be great.
All right, very good. Thank you so much for coming out tonight and educating us.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Sutter, I believe we are on to information items. First one is actually ourselves here, Planning Commissioners' reports. Does anybody have a report to share?
You submitted the item for planning commission.
Oh, at correspondence at the end? That's his article on Lancaster.
I just didn't know if you wanted to say. I saw it too.
Oh, no, just it was an interesting article about the value and the transformative effect that you can have through a well-thought-out Main Street.
I saw this too. It reminded me of West Broad, right, in front of the giant shopping center. You could envision something like that there with that center turn lane and 2 lanes in each direction. You could envision a nice, what did they call it? Barca? Is that what it was?
La Rambla.
The La Rambla. There we go. It's like, yeah. It would be lovely.
Also, I like the references to Congress for the New Urbanism and new urbanism in general. Also, Lancaster is known as a place that has what's called community choice aggregation, and that's where the municipality takes over facilitating the power needs of the city. So
Oh,
they are
interesting.
going to have 100% renewable energy as a result of being able to have a community choice aggregation facility, which I won't get into here. It gets a little complicated. But, I mean, you know, we're struggling with how do we get to, like 50% or whatever. They're going to be 100% here in a few years by
Wow.
virtue of a community choice aggregation. So that's in addition to the great, architectural accomplishments that are referenced in the article. So thanks for sharing it with us. Any other reports, commissioner reports? No. Okay, so I guess we can move on to your report, Paul.
I don't have a written report for you tonight, so I'll just use the time, if I could, to walk through the agenda look ahead, as I like to do. Thank you. Can you zoom in a couple more clicks? So your next meeting will be your regular organizational meeting that you used the first meeting of the calendar year. So election of officers, review of the Planning Commission survey results, and thank you to everyone that's provided those responses so far. Also looking at the board and commission liaison assignments for the calendar year. I don't know that we have any proposed changes to your rules of procedure, but of course we'll include those in your packet and flag anything that we think sort of deserving of a look over. And then using the bulk of, I guess it'll be the bulk of the time, for your Planning Commission annual advance. I thought that what might be helpful, that we're in a bit of an adjustment period given the reorganization within city staff, seating of new council members. We'll soon have a new council work plan to work on while we close out the existing council work plan. I thought how we might use that time is just to look at what are the various programs that the planning division specifically, I'm being a little selfish here, right, but specifically the planning division, what are we working on in terms of current planning, long-range planning, environmental planning is now coming under our umbrella, as well as, of course, transportation planning, and laying out what's the work we do day in, day out, what is the work that's in the council work plan, the community energy action plan, what are the community requests we've received, and how do we think we're going to see that play out over the first 6 months of the year and then the next 6 months once of the year, and be able to get, take the temperature of the commission, and also understand what are the things that we should maybe be pushing a little bit faster, and what are the things that maybe need a little more community support before we can move them forward. As well as zoning updates, which I forgot to leave off the list. So when you put it up on a screen, it looks like a lot of work, but understanding that all these things have a source and a genesis and a stakeholder group that's trying to get them done, I think it puts a little more perspective on the exercise, and I would enjoy the sort of the opportunity to share and, of course, the feedback from the commissioners.
Sounds great.
Sorry, so I should keep going here. A couple things that you'll see on that work program are then popping up in your agenda. So a formal recognition in the comprehensive plan of the Tinner Hill Historic and Cultural District, as well as potentially a zoning map amendment to rezone, and this is at the request of the property owners, to rezone some of those homes that were previously zoned as commercial, getting them zoned more properly as residential. And then, of course, your regular work with the CIP, and there it is, the bike plan coming back to you in February. And of course, we'll be filling in that list as more items come on your radar. That concludes my report.
Great. Any comments on his report? No? Well, I guess.
Not on the report, but I don't know if it's a staff question, but where are we on staffing the commission? We've been short a commissioner for a while. I don't know where to ask this question.
I have attended some of the interview meetings where the council has the committee that interviews applicants. And so they have been reviewing applicants, and it's kind of in their hands now to make a decision. They're aware of our keen interest in having a seventh member. We just have to kind of stay tuned to the timetable and process that they have in place. But there are things happening. At least they invite typically the chair in to participate in these interviews. So at least we get to see that, oh yeah, there are things moving along. So we're coming to the close of our year here. I just wanted to say very quickly that it's been a heck of a year, but I do appreciate all the input and help that you've all provided to help me, fumble my way through this year. So that's very greatly appreciated. And as I look out into the audience, I notice that Councilmember Duncan is here, as he has been very frequently. And this may well be one of your last official acts in your capacity as a council member. So I'll offer you the opportunity if you wanted to say anything. But otherwise, I just wanted to acknowledge and express our appreciation for your presence at our meetings.
Thank you. Never pass up the opportunity to speak. I just want to repeat my comments at your work session that I made a couple of weeks ago, which is how much we at council and I personally appreciate the dedication that you all have shown and the expertise that you bring to bear to these challenging issues that we face. Same goes for staff. I wish every citizen could sit through, even one meeting a quarter of the Planning Commission to understand that this is where, a lot of the really hard work gets done. I mean, I've always known that because of my mother-in-law, who was a planning commissioner before she was a city council member, and her attention to detail was something that I always tried to emulate on council. It was never completely successful, but you all are role models of that sort of attention to vision and vision with details, which is very important. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you for everything you all do. And yeah, it's an honor to be here, and appreciate you working right up to the Santa Soleil Day. So thanks very much.
Well, thank you. And we very much appreciate your efforts to make sure there's a good channel of communication between the Planning Commission and City Council. So with that, I think our business is done for this evening. So I will consider the meeting adjourned.
I'm impressed. was like, there's no way this is going to end before 10:15.